IRS levy on Social Security benefits. Yes, the IRS does levy Social Security benefits, and it does not assume that in doing so, it's going to impose a hardship on you, nor does it ask. So if the IRS threatens to levy, or if it actually does levy Social Security benefits, you must challenge it immediately. And that's up to you. Nobody's going to do it for you. Certainly the Social Security Administration is not going to do it for you either, nor will any of your creditors. Now, in our factual situation, Molly receives her benefits, and that receipt is basically equal to what she has to pay for her basic living expenses. And she needs that, obviously, every month. She has very little property aside from that, and that's just personal property. So if she doesn't get that check, she has a major problem. And if she doesn't get a portion of that check, she has a problem that she's not going to be able to pay all of her necessary expenses. So how's she going to figure out to do that when that's the only income that she has? And that's why I say she should be highly motivated to pay attention to those original and immediate threats that the IRS may levy her Social Security benefits. Now, not all people pay attention when they should. Sometimes they don't understand, sometimes they just get overwhelmed, and sometimes they just don't do it. And that's how it is that 2 months ago she realizes that the IRS levied her Social Security benefits, and even though it didn't seize all of her benefits, which it really doesn't have a right to do, it's still taking a sizable chunk that prohibits her from meeting her reasonable living costs. And that's the key. So at that point, that IRS levy is going to remain in place for as long as that debt remains unpaid. And it's only going to be removed once the statute of limitations on collection expires or once the IRS is paid in full. And imagine how long that can be. In this case, it's 6 years. It can be longer. So, if you want to live less than what it is that the law recognizes you have a right to live at, then you don't have to act. But that doesn't make any sense, does it? And everybody who has their Social Security benefits threatened or actually compromised has to deal with that immediately. So, enough said. It just needs to be dealt with immediately. Now, the way that you show hardship is to basically make a disclosure of your personal expenses and the income that you bring in. And that's the 433A digital tax attorney set. So that's all you have to do is just basically go through your monthly living expenses and demonstrate how much it is that you actually pay. And remember, the federal law extends to you particular allowances for housing, for utilities, room and board, such. And those allowances may actually be greater than what it is that you're paying. So you always want to rely on the allowances. Because just because you're living thin, as I call it, just because you skimp and save to such an extent that you're actually living at a level that is below what the Congress of the United States has determined to be your right, doesn't mean that that's what the IRS should be able to take. That money that you need is supposed to be protected from the IRS. And so when you make your disclosure, you want to be out front about what it is that you pay, but you also want to use the allowances that are available to you if they are greater, and make a note of it. Put an asterisk on there. And by the way, you have to have your consultation with us anyway, so be prepared to talk about these things with me. We'll be able to go over that, and you will receive our insights as to how to go about making your presentation about your expenses in a compelling way so that the IRS understands it, so that the IRS understands you. And that's the key here. It understands you. Now, Molly also has another situation, and I just included this in your facts to stimulate your understanding, if I can do that, where a taxpayer may have more than one IRS challenge at a given time. In this situation, we're saying that she has her levy challenge, but she also has a demand to pay taxes that she doesn't know anything about. And that probably is tied to her previous husband. And she didn't know anything about how that came to be. Nothing. So she's entitled to consideration for innocent spouse protection too. In other words, she can wrap up this entire threat experience. She can wrap up the entire IRS demand if she can get out from underneath the demand itself. And why not use the innocent spouse protection? And Digital Tax Attorney has the set that specifically addresses innocent spouse and injured spouse protection. So remember, just at this point, that individual could have two ways to seek protection from improper IRS demands and improper, illegal IRS activity. Okay? The other thing that we make known here is that there's a digital tax attorney set for administrative IRS appeals. And when you get levied, if the IRS doesn't want to pay attention to you, you have appeal rights that you can exercise. You have them. And if the IRS doesn't want to pay attention, if automated collection machine doesn't want to pay attention to you, then you have a right to request an appeal consideration. Remember, appeals is separate from the actual IRS collection machine. And you get an individual at appeals who's trained to resolve problems, not just to collect money. Not just to collect money. So, at this point, there's no doubt Molly has to get out from underneath that levy on her Social Security benefits. And it shouldn't be difficult for her to do that, seeing how she's currently living in hardship. Then she can address the other question, which is whether the taxes that are being demanded of her are actually hers to pay. Thank you.